It's another brief moment in time. We get to see the change on the sidelines. We're shifting, twisting bits of technology, shifting, lifting up the little bits of reality. While the twin trips through the space-time, we're surely a randomly sparking the photons around me. Let the light flow from the heat, yo. When the photons ignite, highlighting, yo. Then you'll know it's that time when we force a change in our mind's eye. Ho, ho. A little bit lit up with something in us. It's almost like we something else, autonomous, or maybe perhaps it's that missing piece you need. Perhaps it's that simple message you're searching. Perhaps it's just a different time framing. Us giving back the fake you in the mainframe. Getting excited, so are the photons. Emanate the weak. There's a break. Everyone say your bags. Psychology, like cryptographic money and hashing your life into a set of you. It doesn't matter, 'cause this was three perspectives. I got you the show. The show.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody. It is definitely me, 3D, and I am here, hopefully, to change your perspective. And I'm sure you saw the title, hopefully you did at least. So, what do you call yourself? So after having a riveting conversation with some mates over the ideal of bodiless beings of pure energy affecting magnetic tapes, well, then the ideal of, magnets and energy in general affecting magnetic tapes, like cassette tapes, wasn't a new ideal, but the ideal of bodiless beings weighed kind of heavy toll on my mind after that, which really got me thinking about what is a being. Now, I'm sure right now many of you are kind of laughing or chuckling, even in your mind, at the ideal of an adult actually asking this question of what is a being. Surely we all know what a being is, or similar to a sentient or creature, or animal, or human rather so than what you do call yourself. So it's kind of important, what do you call yourself? Sentient, being, creature, animal, or human? Most people in this case probably would call themselves human. And I want to go over why that is, but I also really want to explain what could be from the ideal of sentient and being are the same as human and animals. Even though sentient and beings don't even have to be creatures. So, alright. I want to thank our sponsors, The Organized, for teaming up with Bitcoin Live Digital Broadcasting, DB, because Bitcoin Live DB and The Organized is a powerhouse combo. I do see new heights for both organizations. Now, if you haven't checked out The Organized early morning broadcast for stacks and other topics that seem to be taking off, basically every day they seem to have more and more viewers, and they seem to be getting bigger and bigger. Well, go find them on X, Twitter, among other social platforms, or pretty much anywhere you're watching this at right now. And of course, I want to thank today's sponsor. So let me jump to that in. I want to go ahead and thank Shield Folio for sponsoring today's episode from within a quantum bit, as well as the Bitcoin Live DB network. Now, if you haven't seen a Shield Folio, well, they're like a little black book that are made from stone paper. So they are fade resistant, tear resistant, even water resistant, so you know the info and secrets you store in the Shield Folio will last and survive whatever you throw at it. Now, I personally have a Shield Folio, and I use it for my website info, contacts, crypto keys, among other things. So these little black books are pocket-sized and ready to be by your side, regardless of the adventure you have in real life or online. And I personally do use one for various different things. I honestly do. I love them to death. And on your screen, you'll see a QR. You'll see a discount code, Bitcoin Live 20. So if you go ahead and visit Shield Folio today, use that QR to go ahead and visit right now. You can actually use that code at checkout, Bitcoin Live 20, to get 20% off today. Now, I will have that QR on the bottom of the screen. So you just got to remember Bitcoin Live 20 and you're good to go. We'll come back and review this later. So I do want to roll in with the roll-ins before we go on and move on. So one moment, yo. Damn. Damn. I just looked up and saw the mic is off. I am so sorry. I do that for the intros. It's an old habit. I gotta get off of that because it does not, intros do not flood in anymore to where you guys can hear them in that matter. And I keep forgetting that. My apologies. Anybody who's been watching, I'm sure you guys have just been wondering what's been going on. So, my apologies. We're going to go right back into it. So, we're explaining what these words basically mean. Sentient, being, creature, created, human. And how simple the terms really are. For example, for some reason, none of these come up in reader mode. So sentient only means the ability to experience feelings. And that's it. All it means. Being only means a person or thing that exists. So it can be an object. A creature... Oh, I probably ought to be giving you guys these words again anyways. Apologies. So a creature is something created, moving or non-moving. I had a more specific version of this. Yeah, so it's a creature is something created, moving or not, animal, human, or uncertain being or anonymous aspect of nature, so to speak. So when we look at this, basically, even a robot could be a creature. And when you go into the little button that they have for create, which is directly into that, it just basically means like to bring existence, to invest, produce, cause, occasion, design. Like it's basically they're using it instead of words like upgrade, began, form, cause, and occasion, and design. So we look at the number one to bring an existence. Then yes, a robot is a creature to some extent, so to speak. And then if we go into human, what does a human mean? We just ask simply that simple question. It's a person. Okay? And we can keep doing this for a bit while. Like, what is a person? And it should refer us back to one of these others. Man, woman, or child. Yeah, and then when we go to one of these, it will refer us back to human, or being, or creature, or sentient. And then so we get back to all the ones we just named from there. Okay, cool. So now we're gonna go, so now I was talking about this article. What is animal sentience? Because in this article they do some very confusing things. For example, they separate invertebrate and vertebrate species as if that has any difference in their ability to be sentient. And they make a lot of speculatable type statements where the statement makes you think, well, invertebrate wouldn't be sentient then, because of the way they describe it. And in here, they are saying animal sentience refers to the capability of having a range of subjective experience, thoughts, feelings, and individual personalities. We looked up the actual definition, and it only actually means feelings. Out of all that, it only actually means feelings. So what they're saying is, if something can have a feeling of some kind, even a singular feeling, you should be able to extrapolate subjective experiences, thoughts, and individual personalities from that. And I disagree, because I have a Flipper Zero, and that device has the ability to experience feelings. It's programmed into the operating system. It can experience sadness, like guilt type stuff, like emotional loneliness and happiness and excitement and rage, and has a range of emotions. Okay? So from that, we could infer it is a sentient created creature, which makes it a possible being and possible human, because it's a person, because it's a being, because it's sentient. Understand? It's a sentient being, creature. Therefore, it could be a person. And so that's why I'm disagreeing with, like, for example, this blog. So when you go through here, they talk about the vertebrate species. I was kind of hinting at that a little bit more. It doesn't really matter that much because they do basically something for each one of these. They kind of point out the fact that something about they trying to put and say that the fact that what we consider ourselves to be humans has something to do with neurons, how neurons work, how complex neurons work, and something else about nervous systems because that's where those systems are. I disagree about nervous systems because that's where those systems are. I disagree. I think a lot of what makes humans human, what makes creatures like human, is the ability to have memories. From memories, you gain experience. From experience, you gain the ability to learn. And that, to me, is a big thing there. And one of the things I was pointing out, like, if you was to take stuff you learned and figured out how to talk and deal with domesticated dolphins, and then you try to go out to wild dolphins and do the exact same stuff to try to communicate and talk with them and stuff, you're going to experience a completely different situation. Same thing with pigs, whales, dogs, every kind of animal, including humans. You figure out how to deal with humans in one country, one area of a country, and you go to a completely different country or a completely different area of that same country, it ain't going to work the same. Because it isn't something physical, it's something metaphysical that causes this. And that's something that these people don't want to acknowledge. They want it all to be a physical thing. We're going to get into that a little bit more because these are the type of things that are pushing laws to be made. And some of these laws are changing the words to sentient, to allow animals to have human-like rights. And there are animals right now on this earth in the USA with human-like rights. We've covered that before a little bit briefly. We kind of looked at it and laughed, but it's true. Now, when we go through a lot of this, you'll see some of the stuff kind of makes sense. Birds, yeah, you can, yeah, they have social complexities and stuff like that. Ravens have all this big structure and stuff, the pecking orders, things like that. Reptilians have some kind of similar type of structure setups between themselves sometimes. Then they go into invertebrate species, and here it comes. Beyond vertebrate, scientists are also uncovering more about the subjective lives of invertebrates too. And in here, they just point out that insects experience stress. And I was like, well, stress is just a chemical response to something physical, something happening. It can be something mental as well. Doesn't have to be though, right? So you have physical stress and mental stress both look the same on the outside perspective. And even in the brain, it looks the same in a lot of ways. If you're just doing basic signature graph mapping, which is when you have like little lines on the paper moving around for different areas of the brain being active or not, yeah, it's gonna look the same there. So they said numerous studies have been done being active or not, yeah, it's gonna look the same there. So they said numerous studies have been done on cephalopods, octopods, and squids, which those have unique experiences, and they have brain cells all throughout their body, throughout their limbs, and stuff like that. And they have, they show obvious emotions of fear and stress and things like that. So they seem more complex. I would not consider a fly or a mosquito to have complex emotions. No joke. I would not consider them to have complex emotions. They have simple, base reaction emotions. Everyone has. And then I would say, yeah, a lot of decapod crustaceans like octopi and squids do have more complex emotions, and I'd say octopi probably have the most complex emotions out of the two. I wouldn't put them in the same category either. For example, one of the reasons why I say that is because with an octopi, you can cut off one of its limbs, and that limb will have an understanding it is no longer connected, and the body will have an understanding it is no longer connected, but the limb will still go hunt down and try to feed the body up until its death. It will kind of just basically work to death from that point on. Okay, if the limb was, because it is a separate entity, they do have an understanding of separation, all this other stuff, complex emotions. Technically, you could say that limb is sentient on its own, but it has no way to feed itself, so it works to death. Well, you might try to save that limb, which might be very stressful for the body as it gets further and further away from a limb that should eventually die. Because it's going to be expecting it to feed it, right? That could cause issues. And so there could be ways where people might try them to grow back the rest of the body and all these other little things which would be very devastation, could cause a lot of problems. But some of these things like fear and pain, because like people are trying to prove plants have pain, can experience pain, and fear of the dark was another one I've seen. Well, those are simple reactions. And squids have those simple reactions, but octopi seem to have much more complex reactions. I will admit, I've seen it. Oh, it's awesome. And they have way better farming strategies. I'm going to stop reading what's on here, because now when we get to more and more of this, it gets to be more propaganda than anything. And that's kind of my point, is a lot of stuff about these words, they're being used in propaganda. So, now we're caught back up. Okay? Now we're caught back up. Alright. So, I want to explain why sentience shouldn't be an identifier of intelligence or the ability to determine beings. If law said that sentient creatures or sentient beings have human-like rights, which some animals do, then your dog, cat, or mosquito could have as much or more rights than you or I as sentient human beings, since non-humans would be considered a marginalized class, citizen, protected class in many countries. That's right. Imagine this guy being a protected, marginalized class citizen because he was born in your country, and he invokes into your home, and you have to allow him to live there now and risk dying every day because now he has more rights than you. He's sentient too, even though he wants to kill you, which would be illegal, but perfectly okay for that marginalized individual, allowing more other marginalized individuals to do similar things with similar allowances, like AI maybe. So, okay. Let's get a better understanding of why we're talking about the words like sentient creature, being, created, and human. Here's an article about some people working within AI companies claiming their AI is sentient. Okay, so there's this guy in here about blah, 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 blah. Some person simply spoke with the AI and asked it general questions that it was designed to be able to answer with human-like responses. Eventually, the AI gave a response of fear shutdown. The researcher claims it was designed to be able to have communications with people in deep subjects, but it's an AI-based language models, so the possibility is always there. And I'm going to repeat that. It claims it isn't designed to be able to have communications with people in deep subjects, such as the fear of shutdown. But it is an AI, like an LLM type model. It is a language model, meaning it has access to that information, has the ability. So, because it's, again, language models, so it's a possibility. And again, we've covered on other episodes how certain training methods actually garner the fear of shutdown from AIs. And it's a training method that is considered illegal according to international protective AI laws, and that's human protective from AI laws. So I'm not actually going to go over this. You can come view it if you want to see what they actually said. I think it's a lot of it's just yes. So I'm not joking though. There are actual international laws for AI. And there are even regulations. There are even international AI regulations, which are somewhat separate, but technically different. You can go read more about those on your behalf if you're interested in that. I just want to kind of prove to you that that does exist. Now, I don't remember when exactly which of these episodes was the one that I'm talking about, where we talked about how OpenAI was discovered to do some illegal training that took 2 different upgrades before the shutdown fear began to show that illegal training from the AI outputs. But you can see I've done a handful or more episodes on just AI. We had like a couple of different mini-series on it, and some of them even came with like comparables charts, which I'm going to actually reference that chart. So this is one of the AI comparables chart. You can see it's available on GitHub. We do have a GitHub page for this channel, for this show, specifically to anything we talk about that we have specially made graphics or anything for gets put there for you all to be able to view. This is one of the graphics there, which actually shows like different AIs, which are pretty much right behind my head. Let's kind of zoom in and move around. So we have like cluster, hierarchy, gradient, descendant, formal, ontology, the Baynes network, decision tree learning, large language models, deep learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, transformer, artificial network, reinforcement learning, evolutionary algorithms, hybrid intelligent systems, and artificial intelligent systems integration, or AISI, AISI. And they kind of compare how they do things. Does it define? Does it act? Does it sort? Does it determine? Are 2 things ever equal? And does it have a strong workflow? These are all like really important. For example, cluster only sorts things, so it's very easy to see. It has 1 box there. Hierarchy has 2 boxes. And as you go down the line, if things have similar boxes in the same areas or lines, they're similar, or they can do similar type tasks. And if they don't have the same checkboxes in the same lines, they might still be able to do the same tasks as other ones. And at some point down the line in here, you get to a point where they all can do the same exact tasks as all the ones before it and all the ones within it after a certain point. I believe that's around transformer and down. Everything from transformer and down can perform all the same tasks as each other and all the same tasks as any of the ones above them. And so you can kind of see which ones are similar. Like, for example, the hierarchy one, there is a type of hierarchy similar style setup down here. I believe it's this evolutionary algorithm and reinforcement learning. And you come over, reinforcement learning slows the system down but allows more stronger on-target positive curve. And evolutionary algorithms tend to be more complicated algorithms, best defined new solution methods. They actually do or use completely different reasons. But out of them both, you will come up with some complex methods. They actually do or use completely different reasons. But out of them both, you will come up with some way, like it's going to push you to look somewhere else, right? It's going to show you results in a way that will go, hey, look, results or solutions may be these. So even how these actually work are slightly different, and this graph kind of helps explain it all to you, puts it all back into perspective for you, nice and neatly. So some of these previous episodes we've done before. This is an entire playlist of just my 2nd season of 3D Change Perspectives. So you can come in here, check them out, find one that you like, and enjoy it. Now I do believe let's see, do I put it on here? No, it does not say on here which one I believe it was that might have it. It's just one, I think it's one of the newer ones. So, like one of the ones with the green stuff, playing with AI or agents AI, something like that. I don't know. But there's also what's AI use. That's a good one. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that entire thing. Parables chart, let's give you that QR just one more time, just in case. So now let's look at, well, a thought and a memory. Let's go ahead and look there. I'm going to go ahead and drop some of these other definition things. They take up a lot of RAM for no reason. Get us cut back up. So, alright. Opera. Alright, it's an opera. Oh, I got opera though. That's probably good. There it goes. Alright, so thought. Um, well, I mean, honestly, to define a thought, it's more difficult than most would actually think. Which, yes, think is a definition of thought. So we may need a different way to explain thoughts or ideals that come from your mind with or without your understanding, addition, or want, need, or desire, which is technically the definition of thought. So let's look at the memories first, because they are sometimes considered similar. The ability to remember information, experiences, and people. Whoa! Now we're talking. That, I think, is a definition of importance. The memory is the ability to remember information, experiences, and people. I would say thought must be the ability to process information of experiences, memories, or people, instead of the act of thinking about a considering subject, an ideal of opinion, or a set of ideals about a particular subject, which, I mean, some of that's basically reading itself. See what I'm saying? Like, it's not as straight up as it should be. So, well, let's see if we can get some medical science in the board to help us explain this a little bit. So, okay. Here is an image explaining both. It's not as straight. Okay, so we had some disconnection. We should be back now. Alright, we had some disconnection. We should be back. Human being cannot be an object. That's a requirement. Also, a requirement is the ability for it to be an object has to be not there. And then everything else is possible. It can be natural, it cannot be natural, it can be synthetic or made, it cannot be synthetic or made, it can be a human or human-like, it can be human or can be human-like. And what that really means is a human can have non-natural things installed in them. It can get, synthetics and implants and all sorts of things. They can lose limbs and have replacements. They have that combination of options. Now, if you notice, we got the words again on the bottom. We got a new section. So there's a big black line here that separates emotional and physical feelings and physical orientation from the next two, because I feel like there's a huge difference between these sets. The first two sets of whatever, I think most people will consider that what really makes a human human. But this next set below here, I think, is important for claiming if it is human or not, or human-like or not. For example, communication. All the animals in the USA that have human-like rights had to be able to have some form of communication, or there had to be some form of physical disobedience so bad that humans were afraid to communicate with it. Because there was a tiger that's allowed an apartment because people are afraid they can't get it out. So they're going to wait for it to die. Unless they keep feeding it. But anyways, back to communication. We're going to go back to, that's why it's communication and physical shape are these separators. So communication, under communication, is the following. Able to speak, humanly on average, able to communicate when upon taught, and able to communicate from natural learning. So the bottom two, able to communicate, require the ability to learn, rather naturally or taught. So if they don't have the ability to learn, they will not be able to be in, they will have an X here. Okay? So sentient doesn't matter on any of these points. None of these points matter to sentient, and sentient is not described or defined any of these points. Being, same thing. Doesn't define, describe any of these points. None of these points matter. Creature, none of these points matter because none of these points are described or understood or have anything to do with the word creature. And created, same thing, has nothing to do with any of these points. Although a human being, you have to have all three of these points available. These all have to be there. Period. Physical shape. Here are the requirements for physical shape. Has physical form, has a metaphysical form, has no form. Okay, that's it. Those are the three options. So it can have a physical form, but it doesn't have to have a metaphysical form. And if it has no form, it cannot have a physical form, and it cannot have a metaphysical form. It's kind of confusing. So, sentient doesn't describe any of these points, and has nothing to do with any of these points. So, it doesn't describe, define, nothing. Have nothing to do with them. Being must have a physical form. It cannot have no form. It is allowed to have a physical form, doesn't matter. Being doesn't actually describe that. Creature must have a physical form. It cannot have no form. It has the ability to have a metaphysical form. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Created can be all three or any three of these. Doesn't, any combination of the three. Human being must have a physical form. It cannot have no form. And it doesn't matter if it has a metaphysical form. It doesn't describe that. Now, on the bottom, I put some totals. We'll get into that more later. So they don't really matter right now. Okay, so I do want to switch to the other side of this graph, because we know there's a big black line going up and down. That big line going up and down separates two major factors, or factions. Everything on the left side of the major black line are some kind of physical. In some way, shape, or form, there's some form of physicality there. Even though sentient doesn't have to have a physical form or anything, some kind of physicality. Okay? In that case, sentient in this case is with the being able to feel, right? Okay. Everything on the right side has nothing to do with physicality. And I want to try to prove this. Because a lot of people say interactive personality or a basic ghost, poltergeist, funnel ghost, which is a vortex also, and orbs has physicality. And many people would say ectomist is physicality directly. I say all of these on the right side have no physicality and have nothing to do with physicality. Please allow me to show you why. And I know it's going to be kind of hard. It's just you're going to see where things align. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at where things align. For example, when we look on the left side, we see being and creature have a lot that align with each other. That's because creature has all of them open. And human being kind of has something to do with creature, and being kind of not, and probably something to do with the same thing with both. And we see that one alignment spot in sentient with human being as well, which is can feel internally. Cool. So if we come over to the right, we can see what's similar. We can actually see three things on the right side that are more similar with human than anything else on the left side other than human being. Memory, interactive personality or basic ghost, and a poltergeist. So let's get into it. First set, which is emotional and physical feelings. Required, and they are in this order: can feel external, cannot feel external, can feel internal, cannot feel internal. Thought is a negative on all four fronts. A thought cannot feel external, cannot feel external, cannot, like all of them are negative. Has no ability to feel, and has no ability to not feel. Has no whatsoever. A memory, though, can feel internal and external, and it has nothing to do with the ability to not feel, because it has that ability. It has the ability to also not feel external or not feel internal. You can have a memory that doesn't invoke emotion. You have you can have memories that do invoke emotions. That is what that really means. So when we go back to looking at human being is aligned to have the ability to invoke emotions, but also sometimes humans can have the ability to not evoke emotions. Oh, okay. Interactive personality is the exact same setup. Poltergeist, exact same setup. Okay, understood. This understands why some people believe heavily in ghosts and poltergeists. But I am saying all they are is a memory. Funnel ghost doesn't define any of these points. Has nothing to do with any of these points. I still say it has something to do with memory. Orbs cannot feel, but have the neutral possibility of inability to feel. like the inability to feel, is possible. And ectoplasm and ectomist is the exact opposite of orbs. And in some ways, you could say they're exactly the exact opposite. Many people can't see orbs without digital assistance. Many people can see ectomist only with their eyes. They cannot see it with digital assistance. And so it's kind of marked in that showing where the ectoplasm and ectomist can feel while it has not the ability to not feel. So now we get into the physical orientation of these things, which, again, the requirement for these words are as following. Cannot be an object, can be an object, can be natural, cannot be natural, can be synthetic, cannot be synthetic, human or human-like, can be human or human-like. Okay, so a thought has the ability to be an object. Oh, no. It cannot be an object. It cannot be an object, and it cannot have the ability to be an object. It can be natural, it can also be unnatural, can be synthetic or made, and it can also be naturally made. It cannot be human or human-like, and it cannot be anything similar to us. The thought has a very strict restriction guide because it's simply a thought. A memory, though, has the exact same restriction guide. The exact same. Even though if you think of a human, wouldn't that make it like a human? No, because it's an electrical signal and chemical processing. Therefore, it has a strict guideline. Interactive personality can have the ability to not be an object. It cannot be an object whatsoever, and it can never be an object. Those two are true with it as well. What it doesn't describe is if it's natural or synthetic. That doesn't matter. But it has not the ability to be human. Although it does have the ability to be human-like, or it can be human or human-like. It can be perceived as a human. It can be perceived human-like. But it cannot actually be human or human-like. Gives it some strict guidelines, even though the middle part doesn't matter, because whether it's natural and synthetic made doesn't matter. It would still be an interactive personality. Like if you're talking to an AI hologram at Disney, that's an interactive personality. That is the same as someone who sees a ghost in their house that they can talk to and it responds to them, or they can push a ball to and it pushes the ball back. Like those are interactive personalities with each other. They're uniquely personalities, but doesn't matter. Some are not. In one case, those are natural. In one case, those are synthetic. And I'm saying those natural ones are just your memory. Poltergeist. It's kind of the opposite of interactive personality at the very front, where it can be an object, and it has not the ability to not be an object. So it must be an object. It does not matter if that object is natural or synthetic. And it does not matter if that is human or human-like. Meaning, a human could be perceived as a poltergeist. And definitely, poltergeist can be human-like. So a poltergeist by itself can be perceived as human or human-like. Fine. It has a strict regimen as well, even though it's a bit opposite of interactive personality at the beginning, and at the end we do have that actual possibility of it being human. Only addition. Still pretty strict. I know it's not really that strict. I want to say it's strict though. Alright, so Thalamus. It's the exact same as interactive personality, where it cannot be an object and does not have the ability to be an object. It does not matter if it's natural or synthetic, and it cannot be a human-like, but it does have the ability to be perceived to be human or human-like. It can be human or human-like in the eyes or whatever, beholder. Orbs are even more strict than everything else. I think orbs is the most strict here, where it can only not be an object. The only thing it's actually allowed, whether that's made natural or not, or synthetically, doesn't matter. It only cannot be an object. Period. Ectoplasm and ectomist cannot be an object, but it can be perceived to be human and human-like. And it doesn't matter if it's naturally made or synthetically made. So, a lot of that ghost stuff basically is damn near identical. Where poltergeist is slightly different, orbs is slightly different. Everything else is basically the same. And in general, they're memory. In my perspective. So below the black line, that separates the major difference of what people consider to make what you consider human, and what I believe you need to also consider to say is human-like. So those required words for the next section, what's the next section? It is communication. Those required words are ability to speak, humanly on average, the ability to communicate with taught, being taught, upon taught, and the ability to communicate amongst natural taught. So again, the bottom two are a requirement for these objects or these words to be describing something that has the ability to learn. A thought, memory, interactive personality, poltergeist, formal ghosts, orbs, and ectoplasm and ectomist do not have the ability to learn. So the bottom two are completely X's on all of those. Thought, memory, interactive personality, poltergeist, funnel ghost all have the ability to speak humanly on average. They don't have to, but they have the ability to. An orb cannot have anything to do with any of these. Very strict. But an ectoplasm or ectomist can, or has the right, or the ability, or it might not, sometimes speak on average. Humanly on average. And that's important because, there's some things that they'd be like, blah blah speaks in a completely different language that's not human-like. And that's not humanly on average. Dogs don't speak humanly on average. Dogs do speak. Cats do speak. But not humanly. Got it. It's not like you're speaking an alien language. That would be humanly on average. So, the next section, or the very last section we have for these words, are physical shape. This is very important. The words required for, what's required for these words with physical shape is has physical form, has a metaphysical form, has no form. All of these cannot have a physical form. End of discussion. Period. Boom. Done. Roasted. Thought, memory, interactive personality, poltergeist, funnel ghost, orbs, ectoplasm, and ectomist cannot, 100% cannot have a physical form. Said that it can be perceived to have a physical form, which means that it has the ability to be measured or has the ability to be perceived by some. We call that a metaphysical form. So, thought and memory, they don't actually describe if it has a metaphysical form or not, because we know both of those do have a metaphysical form. But they don't describe it. They don't matter. Interactive personality, poltergeist, funnel ghost, orbs, ectoplasm, and ectomist can have and should have a metaphysical form. Doesn't mean everybody can see it, but it must have it. Keep in mind, thought and memory, we know for exact, have metaphysical forms. And I am saying interactive personality, poltergeist, funnel ghost, orbs, ectoplasm, ectomist are all memories. Or you could say somewhere between a memory and a thought. Okay? That's a better way to look at it. So between a memory and a thought. Now, has no form. Thought and memory have no form. Required. Has no form is required. Metaphysical form, not required. Right? We're not describing that. So, how can you have no form and a metaphysical form? Well, electrical signals and chemical processes we already described are both those at the same time. That's how. And in that case, interactive personality, poltergeist, funnel ghost also have no form, but have a metaphysical form at the exact same time. They're kind of required to have both of those. While an orb, an ectoplasm, and ectomist cannot have a form, but they do require to have a metaphysical form. So again, we have totals at the bottom. We'll get to that in a second. So I have a little thing to say. It goes along with this. Alright. So when looking at the broader scope of this chart, let me see if I can zoom out. When looking at the broader scope of this chart, a memory, an interactive personality, or common goals, and a poltergeist invoke the same emotional possibilities as humans, while sentience, being, creature, and created are nowhere near the same. A memory and a thought are closer to the physical orientation of humans, while sentience, beings, creatures, and created are nowhere near that. Even in communication, the thought and memory and some ghosts are closer to human beings than sentient beings, creatures, and created. Then finally, only in shape is being, creature, and created closest things to human. If you look at all the totals, you need at least 13 checks to be human, and out of that regard, only beings, creatures, and created come close. And all three of those words can be used to directly describe human being. But in more fields and in more ways, it's more human to be a thought or a memory than to be a sentient being. I know. This is something I think most people would consider a very simple thought. They are a human, period. Really, this is to get you to think about what other people are trying to claim. What should have human-like rights. And what people are trying to claim as artificially human-like. As if they are you or me. That's the real horror to be had. When creatures, beings, and sentience obtain human-like rights. For example, if your dog or cat has the same rights as humans, and AI has the same rights as pets, then humans lose rights comparably, because the pet and AI would be protected marginalized classes, thusly allowing the potential of your own thoughts to have more rights than you. And losing a thought could be the same as killing someone. It sounds far-fetched, but as more AI investment companies want their AI to be the first to be called sentient, so their AI will be able to have the chance to gain human-like rights with some flashy show robot that was created specifically to get laws passed to gain control over major systems. Yes, this is the perspective I'm trying to hand you. You don't have to believe me. Look at what AI already controls. For many businesses, for many people, for many things. Look at it. Look at the articles of people calling AI sentient already.
Thank you for joining the show. Please return next time for a new role of perspective. Thank you for joining the show. Please return next time for a brand new perspective. Of perspective. Thank you for joining the show. Please return next time for a brand new perspective.